Welcome. Welcome to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome to a full hour of sports analytics here on the Wharton Podcast Network. This is Cade Massey hosting this week with my longtime collaborators, friends, colleagues, co-hosts, Shane Jensen and Eric Bradlow. Adi Wyner is celebrating Adi Wyner things today. He'll be back. Some combination of us four are here almost every week of the year and have been for 11 and a half years. Proud to say 11 and a half year podcast. The Wharton Podcast Network is officially a thing now. We've been on it for a couple of months, and it was rolled out publicly this past couple of days. And so the Wharton Podcast Network, collection of 5 podcasts at the time, will grow over time in all likelihood. The team at Wharton Marketing Communications has been working very hard on this. We've had a lot of great support. We're excited about the new platform, and we are officially off and running. Our format today is broadly the same as it usually is, except we're going to squeeze in an extra guest. We'll talk more about that at the bottom of this hour, I suppose, at the midpoint of the show. But we're going to open with a guest, Annanya Raghavan. Annanya Raghavan from Google is joining us. Annanya is a sports trends fanalist on the Google Trends team. Her work is dedicated to understanding the evolving interest of sports fans through the lens of search data. So this is Google doing all kinds of interesting things, and including fan analytics. You guys know that we do sports analytics adjacent shows periodically. We jump into things like COVID, obviously, firefighting. We do things like this on occasion, and the fan side of sports is a very relevant side of sports, and we're a business school, so we periodically have these kind of conversations as well. We haven't talked to Annanya before. Annanya, thanks for making time for us. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I know you guys are Pennsylvania based, so I'll just hit at you with Go Birds.
Go Birds. There you go. Appreciate that. Look, she's just catering to us already. She understands her fans that well. She's coming in from the West Coast. She's based in the Bay Area. Annanya played some D2 basketball growing up, and then she's been in this business. She does a little side work with an NBA team, maybe a local NBA team out there in the Bay Area, but she's been with Google for 4 years, crunching numbers. So give us a sense of what you guys do. What's your team look like, and what kinds of insights you're generating? Maybe just give us something concrete that you're working on right now to give us an example of your work.
Yeah, to just kind of like take a step back from there, like my role as a fanalist, it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm an analyst of fans, so I look into the search data of, what people are interested in around sports. And so, as you mentioned earlier, I sit on the trends data team, which is this, small data analyst team within the Google search team, uh, where we cover a wide range of topics. Trends is this large publicly available data set where people can, explore searches from, food to entertainment to sports, which is what I specialize in, and really lets us keep a finger on the pulse of culture. And so, right now, the culture of sports, the big thing going on right now is the WNBA playoffs. So a lot of my role revolves around looking at searches related to that.
Okay. So let me ask you a relatively abstract question. Guys, run me off of this if it's the wrong way to go. What counts as a trend? Because, on the one hand, what's happening this hour is a trend. On another hand, how search this year is different from last year is a trend. So one question just to start with is like, what frequency of trends are we concerned about here?
Yeah, it really depends on what you want to look at. So the great thing about trends is that you can look at like a historical basis. So our data goes all the way back to 2004 to now if you're interested in. But, when it comes to the W and a lot of those things that I do with those partners, it's the real-time data we're interested in, which goes all the way up to 3 minutes ago. So we can really take a look at what people are searching for live, the interests and curiosities that trigger them to dig deeper for more information.
Okay, so you mentioned the WNBA playoffs. Give us an example of something you've seen as we're moving into the playoff time of the season, a trend in the work as you dig into it. Like, what are people? Just give us one concrete example of something that people are paying attention to or curious about in search.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge, like, season this year. WNBA playoffs are searched more than ever before, and then the awards that come along with this postseason are really, uh, driving people to search more when, our Google Pixel partner, Asia Wilson, got her 4th MVP award the other day. People were searching who has the most WNBA MVPs and best WNBA players of all time because that was just, like, such a, historic feat for her. I think she's the first to ever get 4. And then you have kind of the adjacent things that people are interested in, like, people searching for her were also searching for pink wigs. Mark Davis, the Aces owner, and Asia's dad showed up to award her that MVP trophy wearing the signature Asia pink wig. So it's really fun to see kind of where fan interests, you know, go based on their favorite players and teams.
Eric is our resident marketing professor, marketing and statistics, I should say, but sometimes he puts on his marketing hat. So Eric wants to jump in here.
That's what I was going to put on the hat I was going to put on, Kate. So, Ananya, you mentioned something about the partners. So, we're also a business school and a business show. What's the business aspect of this? Like, for example, do you want to, like, does the NBA want to know this information? WNBA want to know this information, for example, because then they can go to their advertisers and partners and say, this is how many searches, this is how many eyeballs, or is there not I'll call it a direct form of monetization?
I mean, our real goal with this partnership is to just really increase coverage and our commitment to women's sports, and that was what we did when we entered into this in 2021. Our goal was really to increase the amount of hours of women's sports coverage and, just make the league more accessible and these women's sports leagues more accessible, and, we've seen that since Google entered into the WNBA partnership in 2021, search interest in the league has grown over
This
330%.
implies, by the way, Ananya, your answer implies that you're not just a passive measurement system, that you guys are a partner. So could you give us a sense of what like activities or actions Google is taking in partnership with, let's say, the WNBA to increase activities?
Yeah, I mean, the first season that we entered into this partnership was the W's 25th season, and so, we funded to make sure that more of these games could be on national television and brought, 25 games for the 25th anniversary to coverage on ESPN to help, fans have access to those games, and we were one of the first WNBA changemaker partners, and we've seen a lot of, brands come in since then. Yeah, it was really kind of laying the foundation and showing that women's sports and the W is a business to invest in.
How much to the extent are you looking at kind of trends within individuals over time or just kind of trends at the population level over time? I could imagine because of some media blitz that people might kind of like search like for the WNBA or whatever example, more like, in a particular, like, a week after a big media blitz or something like that. But then what you really would want to capture is more like kind of sustained attention on the sport by the same individual. So I don't know how much you're measuring like, oh, we have a trend is just an influx of searches, at the population level, or whether you've actually got people tracked over, kind of individuals essentially tracked over time where you're actually able to measure their increased engagement in a more sustained way.
Yeah, one of the things about trends is that we don't track those individuals. We're very serious about, privacy concerns and making sure that there's no personal information. So, trends data is aggregated, it's normalized, it's anonymized. So there's no demographic information on who these people are that are doing these searches. We don't know anything about gender, age. The things that we know is, where searches are coming from so we can break it down by location from the country level all the way down to the city level. But yeah, so it's really more of this holistic view of the population and, what fans of this league want to know as a whole.
Do you track individual players, not the demographics of the searchers?
Yeah.
Like, do you track Paige Buchers or, Aja Wilson or other Caitlin Clark, as well as overall WNBA types of things?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we can see like who are the top searched players that people are searching for, and before All Star, like Paige Becker's draft outfit was the top searched WNBA outfit, and Caitlin Clark's the top searched player and rookie last year when she entered the league, and so yeah, we definitely take a look at those kind of things within the league. It's not just general to the WNBA, but we want to kind of dig deeper into okay, who are the players people are interested in, who are the teams, what are the culturally adjacent things that people want to know.
Yeah, I guess when we're talking about this, I'm sort of thinking about my own fandom and how much of it I kind of put into search queries as opposed to kind of how I exhibit it elsewhere. And so I kind of wonder, if you guys are thinking about sort of like the other sort of supplementary kind of data sets that you have out there, essentially on the internet. I don't know, like Reddit or something like that, where you could kind of like obviously that's not what you guys directly own, but it would be kind of a cool validation or at least comparison set to sort of see like how trends are happening, kind of in sort of like public spaces on the internet.
Well, they do on
But
YouTube.
that don't consist of necessarily search terms. Like I have a lot of angst and a lot of opinions about the Red Sox. I don't like search, into Google, how do you get better pitching? Because I know how to do that. The Red Sox don't. They should be the one doing the searching, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that is great about Google is like it might not be your end destination, but it is part of that journey for digging into and finding more information like about your questions. Like maybe you've missed the Red Sox game, a couple weeks, so you want to go back and look at the box scores for their past few games. So you start at Google, you search that, maybe you see the pitching's going horrible. So that's where, your journey kind of takes you to those other platforms to get more information. But, I think that one of the great things about Google and search is like no matter where you are in your fandom journey, like if you're just like at the beginning trying to get into it, get more information, learn more, or whether you're that super fan, really wanting that advanced data and more complex information, like Google's a place that you can go to, start or in the middle of your journey.
Ananya, can you give us an example of the way, an insight that you've shared with one of your partners that has been new for them or new for you guys, or a surprise you may have come across at some point in the data that you've collected once you start slicing it up? Just give us some sense of like one level down when you're digging through as much as you are, and the value you're providing to your partners through that deeper search, through that deeper analysis.
Yeah, one of the fun things about trends is that we can see kind of those adjacent interests that I've mentioned. And so, this past year at WNBA All-Star, we activated this space where we showed what fans of different WNBA teams are searching for, like the different like music genres, food types, fashion items, those kinds of things. And I think that one thing that these leagues and partners are really interested in is the stuff that happens, off the court, off the field, those other cultural touch points. And so, we can see that, fans of the Liberty search for Chinese cuisine the most, whereas fans of uh, Indiana search for barbecue the most. I'm just giving like that example. I don't remember the data set completely off the top of my head, but I think kind of seeing those differentiating elements and what makes fandom unique, as well as what are the things that people share, we're able to see both of those kinds of dichotomies within the trends.
How is it that you know the fans are searching for these things? So you said that you know the location, but you're not supposed to know like serial correlation between searches.
Yeah, we're not following individuals or a specific like journey, but within trends, if you go to the trends.google.com website, you can put in a topic and then you can see those related searches and related queries. And basically, like within those related topics, it means that, people searching for X also search for Y. So that topic that you inputted, say you put in the New York Liberty, and in that related topics, you see, searches for Chinese cuisine. That means people searching for the
I think
Liberty
I think what you're
also search
saying,
for
Anya, is
Chinese.
that someone has that data somewhere,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
but no, I'm just saying Google has that data, but it's not like you can use it in the sense that it can give you like, co-search types of patterns and stuff, but nor does anybody at Google, is my understanding, have access to that raw data that would help
Yeah.
identify individuals, is what you're saying.
Correct. Like a significant number of people would have to be doing this search for it to show up in the data. Like we don't know what any one particular individual is doing,
Right, right, right.
nor
What
do we want
about forecasting in a way? So one of the things we like about models is that we think models often see truth, if you will, a little bit before the rest of the world sees it, before it's plain. This happens sometimes, a good model. Have there been any instances where something ticks up in your trends that people didn't know was a thing yet? Like, this portends favorably or unfavorably for something in the next few days, weeks, months.
Yeah, we don't like to say that trends can like predict what's going to happen, but I think that there's sometimes that we see things in the data before, culture really catches on to it. You know, for example, off the top of my head, is not sports related, but it's like, people were searching for Labubus, like, and we saw that spike happen in the trends before the cultural craze really established. And so it's not so much like predictive as it is like we can see the markers before like it necessarily becomes
Yeah.
huge.
Right, right, right.
If we were sitting at a party and I asked you, so you told me what you did, and I said, Ananya, what's the one trend happening in the WNBA right now that you found exciting or interesting to measure, or what's the big takeaway from what's going on in the trends of the WNBA right now? What would you say that is?
I think the most exciting thing has been the year over year growth. Like I said, like interest this season is at an all time high. Last year we saw it reach an all time high, and the year before that. So it's the league's just getting bigger and bigger, and more people are noticing the amazing talent that's in the league, the amazing women, and they're wanting to follow along. They're wanting to learn more and dive deeper into them. And I think that that's just really exciting. And I think that it's a trend that's going to continue to grow with the growth of the college game, the amazing talent that's going to be coming into the league soon. So it's just a really, really exciting time for the WNBA and lots of great basketball ahead.
Ananya, is there any way for us to see your work or to tap into these trends if we have questions or if other people want to sample them?
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching a WNBA game and the playoffs are going on right now, there's actually a couple games tonight and later this week, but you can see the trends in broadcast. We have these fan search segments where, I'm sharing data with ESPN producers. I'm looking at what people are searching for live, real time at a game, and I'm sharing with them. So, you can see the work show up there. We also have a, daily trends newsletter that people are able to subscribe to with a small sports section in there highlighting sports trends um, every day, a handful. And I also do a monthly trend sports newsletter highlighting the biggest things in sports of the month. And then, like I said, if you're just wanting to go play around with yourself, trends.google.com is a great tool to go and explore, see what people are searching for.
Ananya, if we wanted to get your newsletter, where do we go?
You can go to trends.google.com, and I believe there's a link to sign up to that. I know that you enter your email at the bottom, it'll subscribe you to our daily newsletter, and within the daily newsletter, there's a link to sign up to the sports one.
Okay, terrific. All right. Well, listen, Ananya, thank you very much for the time. Been a delight to talk to you. Wish you the best with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for having me. And again, go Birds.
Go Birds. Annanya Raghavan, sports trends fanalist on the Google Trends team in the Bay Area, looking at all kinds of issues, but especially as a partner to the WNBA on what fans are looking at around the WNBA. Thank you, Annanya. All right, team, that is our first interview. We're going to roll into a second interview momentarily. We're going to do two here in the first half of the show. We are going to be talking to David Dase. David is a vice president at Goldman Sachs in charge of their sports finance operation. Come back and join us briefly after the break. We're going to roll into a second interview now in the first half. We're going to talk to Dave Dase. Dave is a VP at Goldman Sachs. He runs the sports, one co-head of the sports finance unit there. And he's going to be at a conference that we're hosting here at Wharton later this week. He's the leadoff session. Dave's the leadoff session at the Wharton Sports Summit Friday morning, and looking forward to hearing him there. But we thought it'd be a good chance to talk a little sports finance with Dave. He was a Cornell undergrad, but a Wharton MBA, and he's been with Goldman for a little bit. He's down in Atlanta. And if you've been paying attention to sports finance, you know that a lot of interesting players have gotten into the game in the last few years, and Goldman Sachs is one of them. We around Wharton consider sports investing to be kind of the vanguard of sports business and one of the most exciting areas in sports business over the last 10 years, and expect it to be even more so in the future. We needed to hear more about it. So Dave, thank you for making the time for it. Appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you. Terrific to be here, and look forward to the discussion and getting back to Wharton on Friday.
Yes, we will see you there on Friday. Glad you're going to make it up, and looking forward to this session. But let's talk a little bit about sports finance here. Give us a sense, just kind of big picture. Why did Goldman get into sports finance? Over what period of time did this happen, and what are the big drivers that bring you guys into the market?
Yeah, I'd say, we've been in the sports business for 20 plus years. Historically, had been more opportunistic around selling a team or financing a building, a new stadium, new arena. And with the explosion in sports valuations, which you've chronicled on many of your podcasts, along with the opening up of the markets to institutional capital, again, small steps, but a move towards democratization to some extent of capital coming into the sports ecosystem, we felt that we really started thinking about it more as an asset class like we would any other industry. And so it's clearly at least $1 trillion asset class. If you take the entire ecosystem around sports, we think it's probably closer to $2 trillion. And as we think about the business, and we want to become much more systematic in terms of how we thought about it, where we wanted to spend time, where there were opportunities, and where there may potentially be value, where we could potentially help clients achieve their goals, objectives. And so we set up the business. We're about 1.5 years in or so. We think about it in 3 buckets. Leagues and teams are one area. Sports adjacencies are another. So think about putting, all the leagues and the teams in the inner circle, and then ticketing, gaming, data analytics, apparel companies, med tech companies, et cetera. And we're probably tracking about 150 to 200 companies in that sports adjacent market. And those are, companies which need debt, they need equity, they do M&A, they buy, they sell, those types of things. And then the third bucket is infrastructure. So stadiums and arenas. My co-head, Greg Carey, has been doing this for 30 plus years. And the financing of those has gotten incrementally more, the dollars have gotten much bigger. It's gotten more complicated because a lot of just building an arena doesn't really pencil from an economic perspective. You need to, in essence, build a city. You need mixed use development. You need entertainment zones. You need hotels. You need apartments. You need office, et cetera. And that combined with the institutional capital coming in, which we'll talk about, quite a bit, I'm sure. Each one of those buckets has different return characteristics. Each one of them has different cost of capital characteristics. But there are broad allocations of institutional capital that really wants to move into it. So that was the impetus, and we're about 18 months in and really excited about what we're seeing, and even more excited about where we're going in the future.
That's a very helpful lay of the land for us, because the inner hub you described, sports and teams, is the highest, most highly visible part. For example, the Celtics just sold. Understand you guys were a part of that. Doesn't get more high profile than that. But then you name these other 2 tiers, and we know just enough about this space to know these are big tiers. Can you give us some sense of the breakdown? You said in general this is about a $1 to $2 trillion asset class, roughly, and only roughly. But how should we think about the sports and teams part of that versus the adjacency part of that versus the infrastructure?
Yeah, like, I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, the first two, again, it depends a little bit how you think about big streaming companies, right? So if you took big media companies or an Amazon, et cetera, right, that would blow out. And so
Good.
my
Right.
comments are kind of net of that type of
Okay.
commentary.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but look, I mean, clearly the teams. I mean, you've seen where the average NBA valuation now. I mean, you've seen the Celtics at 6, the Lakers at 10. The Trailblazers are out there, rumored to be around 4 billion or so from that perspective. NFL teams are clearly in that 6+, 6 to 10 zone. You've seen minority stakes trade or, rumored to be trading close to that $10 billion type zone. So, um, there's a lot of focus on the teams, certainly in the leagues. We worked for Liberty Media a year ago, buying a company called Dorna, which is MotoGP, which is the motorbike equivalent of Formula One, right? Silver Lake's taking Endeavor private, or has taken it private, right? And so you think about sports agencies and everything around the sports ecosystem and what companies like Endeavor do. And so there's a lot. DraftKings, FanDuel, all the ticketing platforms. I mean, there's a lot of good sized market cap that's in that middle bucket from an adjacency perspective. And then the third bucket, the infrastructure, is, fundamentally, it's kind of a beast of its own to some extent, right? It's just
I would
different.
think
It's
so.
it's in
Yes.
terms of investment capital.
I think Eric wants to jump in here. We should say Eric, as our vice dean of WAIAI, works with you because Dave has recently joined the WAIAI board. And so these guys have a prior relationship. But Eric, why don't you jump in?
That is absolutely true. So, Dave, just to clarify for our listeners here, what you're not saying is that Goldman Sachs takes an equity position and is buying and selling teams. You guys are on the financing and debt part of things. So, for example, Eric Bradlow wants to buy the Boston Celtics and needs $8 billion. He doesn't have $8 billion just sitting around necessarily. So he comes to you and Goldman Sachs, and you guys help put together the financing for it, as opposed to Goldman Sachs is going to start buying teams or be partial shareholders of teams. Is that correct?
That's right, Eric. And that's a great example. So Bill Chisholm, who is the new owner of the Boston Celtics, Wharton grad.
I was just about
Wharton
to say
grad, yeah.
Wharton grad. There we
Wharton
go.
grad. So we worked with Bill. He, ultimately paid $6 billion plus for the Boston Celtics, and it's multidimensional. So we can help raise traditional, more debt-oriented type capital. We talk about one GS at Goldman Sachs. So one Goldman Sachs, it's multidivisional and cross-divisional. We have in our wealth management business, our asset and wealth management business, a family office coverage group called Apex. They are now covering over 700 multi-billion-dollar family offices around the globe. Not surprisingly, there's a lot of interest in those types of family offices for sports assets. So we will partner with them. We will partner with our private wealth management group to help identify individuals who have an interest from an equity perspective in terms of co-investing along with the governor in the NBA, which in this case is Bill Chisholm. We also, the NBA has opened up and the other leagues have opened up ability for more institutional capital to come in. In the NBA, it's a 30% cap. And so in effect in that, we talked to multiple institutions that were out there about potentially providing capital into the capital stack in terms of financing the Celtics. And so that's what we do. So it's more akin to investment banking advisory type work as opposed to principal type work.
Let me ask a related question. You would think the value of a sports franchise, which is certainly related to one's ability to borrow it, might related to the performance of that sports franchise. So when you guys think about getting involved or when people are thinking about investing, do you have this? Now I'm putting on my Wharton AI and analytics hat. Does somebody at Goldman have to build a forecasting model? Let's just use Bill Chisholm and the Celtics. Like, here's kind of a projected revenue model for the Celtics, but you could argue if the Celtics are 9-73, that's going to be a different revenue model than if they're 60-22. So does that play a role at all? Does on-field performance, how does that relate to what anybody lending money would care about, which is projected cash flow?
It does, but I'd say it's kind of through a cycle, right? I mean, I think there are performance over time. If you were 9-73 in perpetuity, I think that would be one thing year after year. But and we're really seeing this, and I think you're starting to see this emerge in terms of some of these valuation differences in these leagues, that there are franchises and brands which resonate, have this deep connection with fan base. It's multi-generational, it's live sports. As you know, media businesses are having a really, really hard time aggregating any kind of audience together, absent sports. And so we're really starting to see this focus on brand. And ultimately, and we can talk about direct to consumer and where that may be going, but ultimately, what's the addressable market potentially of that brand and where could it go? We're really, really bullish and from that perspective. But I think different teams, different clubs with different legacies in different cities, different fan bases, different passion levels will have score differently on all those types of metrics, and the ability to get to some of that breakout type growth, I think will align more, be more highly correlated with those bigger names, those bigger brands who have those opportunities.
I mean, Bradlow's a Yankees fan, and it's been a while since they've won the World Series, but somehow they're still.
Hasn't been that long.
Cowboys are like the perfect
Yes.
example of like impervious.
You know my motto, Dave talked about this. This first thing he said, addressable market. When you have a big N, even a small P times a big N still yields a big number. And so, the Boston Celtics are a big brand. There's a big addressable market. The same is true for New York Yankees. Same is true for his home city of Atlanta. There's a lot of people there. So it's a large addressable market. You just got to figure out how to monetize a larger fraction of it.
So, Dave, we often think about sports finance. We think about it from the investor side. And you mentioned at the top the democratization of owning some of these assets. That's been one of the real drivers in the last 10 years. But it seems like there's also some benefit, if you will, to the club side. And I've heard you guys talk about new revenue streams that organizations might be able to take advantage of. Can you give us some sense of how, other than the owners, and I know this is a good way to monetize a previously pretty difficult asset to monetize, what ways do organizations benefit, and what are these streams that they're going to see that they didn't see before?
Well, I think, and you've seen this in the professional leagues, and you're really starting to see it in college sports now too, a professionalization of management, that these are real businesses with multiple dimensions to them. Product development, marketing, engagement, food and beverage, certainly what you do inside the physical infrastructure. And so I think you're going to continue to see more and more of that. Place where I'm really bullish, we touched on a little bit before, is just direct to consumer. And we're just at the real beginnings of this in terms of teams and who do they connect with, knowing who their fans are, who's coming in, what their family structure is like. And so you think about best in class consumer marketing in a new direct consumer, digital world, and the ability to build really deep, enduring relationships that are incredibly sticky, right? There's passion behind this. Oftentimes it's multi-generational. Oftentimes it's 2 or 3 generations. And so to build that kind of engagement with a brand is really, really powerful. And so I think you're going to start hearing concepts about lifetime value of a fan, right? Concepts you've seen and heard in other types of businesses, or lifetime value about a family. I think you're going to start seeing more and more metrics like that.
What is Goldman's role in pushing them organizations along in that way? So you hear this, you hear this some kind of on the college football side, which is my great passion. You hear people worried about private equity because if they're in, they're going to want to say, but there's an advisory professionalization aspect of it that is more benign than that. I'm just curious when, Eric was saying, well, y'all finance deals and you'll put things together, but we hadn't heard much about what role he would play to promote these things.
That was going to be exactly my question, which was, I assume this was I love the way Cade phrased it. What I was going to say is, I assume you just don't lend money or act as a broker and lend them and then walk away and say, good luck, guys. This is the advisory part. That's why I'm excited to hear this.
Well, we would, a team sale or any business sale or an IPO, right? I mean, we led the StubHub IPO last week, right? So that would be in the sports adjacent, area arena as well, just given the dominance of sports ticketing that's running through these ticketing platforms. But anytime we take on an assignment or try and sell something, it's in essence like an IPO. You try to come up with the best story you can, you curate it, you work on it. What are the key selling points and how do you think about it? So Eric touched on building a financial model. So yes, we do build financial models. We do go out. We think about what upside cases, right, could be. We've worked with European soccer teams that have over 100 million fans in their database, right? And they will tell us, gosh, we probably know what maybe 1 or 2% of those fans, who they are and what they're doing. And so you think about in a software context where you have kind of 5 cohorts, if you could just move 50 basis points of fans from cohort 2 to 1 and 3 to 2 and 4 to 3, you could grow for another 25, 30, 40, 50 years. And some of these brands, and you've touched on a couple in basketball, be it the Celtics, be it the Lakers, these are not only regional, national brands. These are truly potentially global brands, right? And so that 100 million for a European soccer team, many of them think that should be 200 or 250 or 300. And so you start to think about this relationship and what you could do in promotion and getting people into the stadium, meeting players. So I'm not sure it's any different fundamental ideas, but I think your ability to do it in a virtual digital world is just greatly enhanced. And so the depth of that relationship and the engagement of that relationship is just much more valuable.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we're on tight time with you, so we're going to have to let you go soon, but maybe one last question. Give us some sense. You have a great vantage point on this. Give us some sense of where you think sports will go or how sports will be different 5 or 10 years from now because of this change, because it's now an asset class. What do you see different 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, I'd say first on the institutional capital side or the capital side, I think if you went back 20 years in private equity, there really wasn't a secondary market for if a firm wanted to sell 20% of fund 3, there really wasn't a process for doing that. Today, the private market structure set up, there's a real process for doing that. I think sports will move in that direction. I think it'll be slower, the governance of the leagues, the requirements around approval rights and everything else. But I think ultimately for these valuations to continue and increase, and we do think they will continue to increase, you need more pockets of capital that are going to have the ability to come in. And so, right, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, other pockets of capital that may not have had the opportunity to start to come in, I think you will see more flexibility among the leagues. Not saying when, exactly how, but I think ultimately you're going to want the ability for all different pockets of capital to come in and have that opportunity. I think you will see more from a secondary market perspective. I also think you're going to see, we talked about it, direct to consumer, but these brands, these big brands, there's probably 20, 25 of them around the world in different sports, but I think they are going to go full on. And I think this direct to consumer element is I think the winners, those who sit in one of those seats, I think are going to get an incredible amount of economics out of that. It won't dilute what the core, right, what teams are doing in, good markets, because you in essence will be part of the league. You'll still be getting the league economics and everything else. But what we thought of historically is everybody's kind of getting, similar type economics from the league, in terms of media rights and everything else. I think these bigger brands are going to be able to, in essence, find new revenue streams to a direct-to-consumer model, which I think will have implications and from a governance perspective. And I think college is going through a lot right now. Ultimately it's going to get figured out, but it's kind of messy, and there's a lot of tricky factors around it. But I think it ultimately gets resolved in a way that Olympic sports do great. Women's sports do great, but it's complicated because you just don't have the governance around it to try to make decisions. Unlike what you've seen in the North American sports leagues, which has really driven a lot of the value. The governance system and the decision making system that sits in place in those leagues has really driven a lot of value.
Super interesting and provocative. We could just do another hour right on that. I was going to ask, because you said this B2C. For the top 30 or 40 brands across the world in sports, those guys are going to really see an acceleration. I was curious, does that include the top handful of brands in college sports? And will they participate? Will they be able to participate in the same way? And, like you said, depends on governance, but it's right there. Presumably it's there for those in the same way that it would be for professional.
I think it potentially is. I mean, if you went back, at least to when I was growing up, college football is still a very regional thing, right? And now most of the top 20, 30 brands, they're national brands, right? Or they're big brands. Kids are coming from all over the country to go to these schools. So I think that opportunity exists. And I think there'll be elements of what happens in college that replicate some of what we've seen in the professional leagues.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. All right, Dave, we'll let you go. Greatly appreciate the time with you. I know you're doing a few other things, so we really appreciate you making time for us, but we'll look forward to seeing you on campus on Friday.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Enjoyed it.
Thanks,
absolutely. Dave Dase, he is head of the Southeast region at Goldman Sachs and the co-head of their sports unit. They've been doing sports investment and financing for a long time, it sounds like, but they're officially have this group only in the last few years. A number of big players have moved into the sports finance world. All right, guys, that's been the first half of the show. Welcome back. Welcome back to Wharton Moneyball. Rolling into the open segments part of the show. We're going to go for 15 or 20 minutes now after having talked to a couple of guests, 2 sports business guests. We don't usually dabble that much in that direction, but man, oh man, I thought both were quite interesting. We could have talked to sports finance for another couple of hours. It's definitely going to be a topic. It's grown around Wharton, and it's only going to grow more, not just Wharton, other places as well. But why don't we talk on-field sports a little bit? And in the time we have, we're going to be here. This is Cade with Eric and Shane. Adi is out this week, but why don't we just do a little round robin or 2 or 3, what caught your eyes? And there's lots of different things we could talk about. I'm curious what you're most interested in talking about. Why don't we start with Shane? What caught your eye recently, Shane?
Well, what caught my eye today is that starting 2026, we're finally going to have some semblance of automated balls and strikes, robo umps. It's a little challenge system. It's all I mean, honestly, they could clearly roll it out. They could roll it out completely and just call balls and strikes with the robot. But now at least the players or the players directly involved in the play will have a challenge system by which we can get a smaller, a larger set of calls right.
If a ball touches the strike zone, is that a strike?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, if you watched it in spring training, basically, if a sliver of that ball hits the strike zone, I mean, again, at that resolution, I don't know exactly, but like if a sliver of the ball hits a strike zone, it's a strike.
Let me ask you a question then, since I would assume that the challenges can be seen like right now, just like they say, listen, they put their headphones on, they say, challenge that call at first base.
It's only the batter, the pitcher, and the catcher that can call a challenge.
But can I get a signal from the dugout?
Nope.
It's unbelievable.
Oh,
that sounds like such a mess. That's remarkable.
No, you have to. I mean, it's still again. It's so funny. It's kind of like the IRS being like, "Oh, well, you got to file your tax and tell them how you know, but we actually secretly know because we can send you to jail if you don't file them correctly."
Shane?
It's like they know what the correct balls and strikes
I don't want to pick on a
we still need to have the umpires
tell me
involved.
We're not going to have a Houston Astros situation where I'm in the dugout, I'm like, or I start banging on something.
Well, yeah, I mean, currently there's that system. If a bad call is made, the manager goes, "Hey, what the heck?" and yells.
Right.
And the batter could, I mean, that type of stuff. Or the fans reacting. You can't, I mean, there's a lot of people with eyes on the strike zone that can signal to the pitcher and batter. But I mean, the batter himself probably has the best idea of all that it was a bad call. Or the pitcher.
Well, but so 2 things here. I reacted first the same thing y'all reacted to, which is, man, I mean, you've only got 2 challenges all game, and you're going to and the players.
No. Two unsuccessful. You're limited to 2 unsuccessful challenges. If you have a successful challenge, you can keep going.
Okay, well, still, that's a very precious. It's a precious commodity to be in.
Oh yeah,
everybody's got discretion and nobody has control. Yeah. That's a heck of a system.
No, that's why it's only an intermediate state, because there's gonna be like 6 challenges they wanted to make every game, and like a season or 2 from now, we'll just go unlimited challenges.
Yeah, that's what.
I.e., the system where it gets called correctly.
Right. So this is just baby steps in, because the number of calls this will affect is very small per game. I mean, there are 200 pitches a game.
I think it's an interesting prediction exercise. How many successful challenges you'll get per game?
2 unsuccessful. What's the number? I get 2 challenges, or I get as many as 2 unsuccessful challenges.
The latter.
Well, you get 2 unsuccessful challenges. You have as many successful challenges
20
as you want.
if I think I'm right.
But if you think you're right on all 20, then go for it. You'll get 20 right. But if you're wrong for more than 2, or 2 or more, you've burned through all your team's challenges for the game.
And if you're
so you're worried, Eric, you're shaking your head because Jazz Chisholm's going to burn through the Yankees challenges in his first at bat, because I've never seen a guy argue more balls and strikes where he's actually wrong.
There's no way I'm going to let my batters, without some wink signal or something, challenge squat. No way. Batters are wrong all the time.
Yeah, they could be.
There's no way I'm going to let a batter challenge without me giving them the signal.
Or I certainly think there'll probably be trust systems open up where like certain batters will quickly get like a red light from their manager being like, you don't use any of our challenges.
Yeah,
bro.
right.
You're
Come
not good
on.
at it. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that type of stuff will happen. But again, it's like this weird imperfect intermediary state, but it's better than before where we had no recourse other than yelling at the ump and getting thrown out.
I'm just going to celebrate it as surely an intermediate step on the way to a more comprehensive system. That's surely what this really means. Okay, Eric, what caught your eye?
So I didn't know the answer to this until I looked it up. So obviously I'm a Bucks fan. There was a point in the game right at the end, and I didn't know what the right thing for the Bucks to do was. Just to tell you all the situation. The Bucks are up by 6 points. The score is 26-20. Okay? A minute 50 left. The other team has no timeouts. Okay? It's 4th and 1.
Hold on, the other team is the Jets, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
The Bucks are playing the Jets. The Bucks are up 26-20. Under 2 minutes left. Okay? You're up 6. It's 4th and 1 from the 18. Now let's play this out.
Your own 18 or the opponent's 18?
The opponent's 18. Wait.
Play
Shane.
it out.
Wait.
Right.
You go for it. You make it. You win the game. You kick the field goal. You go up 9. You win the game.
Yeah.
So the question is, which do you do? And I was sitting there live wondering, I really don't know. Like, I could make it now. By the way, what happened, I'm sure all of you know, the Bucks decided to kick the field goal. It was blocked and returned to the house. The Bucks went down 27-26. Now, of course, thank God we have Baker, the touchdown maker, and so he drove us down the field and we kicked the field goal and won the game. But it was really an intriguing question. I know the numbers. Do you guys have any? Because they
well, okay. It does seem like we were getting like a lot of blocked kicks this year. Just
this weekend was
so I assume you're historical. I am curious. I mean, 4th and 1, if you've got a good quarterback sneak, it's got to be like 90% or something like that, right?
Yeah. So just to let you know, it was almost indifferent. By going for it, the Bucks had a 96% win probability. By not going for it and kicking the field goal, they had a 94% win probability. But I think this is one of those things where you have to say, maybe it's not an expected value play, it's an uncertainty play. Like, if you go for it and don't get it, let's remember, you're up 6. They still have to drive 80 yards
I would want
I
kind of want the relative probabilities of the next play for my decision. What you gave me is the win probabilities, and that's probably what you had on hand.
That's what I had. That's what I had. But you can think about it like, and by the way, another thing to say is, but see, this is where you have to go 2 steps ahead. Because you say, well, the kick could get blocked and returned to the house. Okay, it did. But then you still have the ball, only down 1 point with a minute something left, so you can win the game then too.
Which is what happened.
Which is what happened. But even not being a outcome-oriented person, let's think about the probability. It was one of those situations where I literally had no good mathematical intuition about which of the two was better. And by the way, I think minor tweaks of it, like, all right, suppose I told you the Jets had 1 timeout, or suppose I told you there was 2 minutes and 3 seconds left, or suppose I told you it was 4th and 2. It's almost like the derivative of the probability with respect to some little perturbation could actually be quite huge. And so and by the way, this is why it's painful to know a little bit of statistics. I should have just been enjoying the game. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, we're going to have to talk about this on the air. And I got to think about these perturbations and what if it's
it's hard to enjoy a game when you're like, when the Jets are still in it in the 4th quarter. You know your team's not doing well if you're
that's
doing
a separate issue. But I have to admit, that's what I was thinking live at the time.
Okay, but this isn't what caught my eye, but just a quick riff on that. I discovered something last night. I've been very slow to get to the Manning cast, and it's not for any reason. I'm pro those guys, but last night the Ravens were on, and I just went full Manning cast the whole time. And usually when I watch the Ravens, I'm like a great big anxiety bucket. I'm a 9-year-old boy. It's not impressive in any form or fashion. And somehow watching those guys distracted me enough that I just was not stressed as I watched the game. Of course, I quit watching it at halftime, which was a very wise, mature decision. But I'm telling you, the Manning cast, for those of you who get worked up watching your team, if you got a Manning cast alternative, it's a wonderful distraction. Okay, what caught my eye? There's a fellow out there named Andrew Percival, who builds college football metrics consensus. He's made it all publicly available, and he's done phenomenal stuff on Tableau. So you can get up and you can get all kinds of figures and numbers and graphs and it's a real service. And he's got a bunch of models in there, and he's tracking model performance, all kinds of things. So Percival's CFB metrics consensus is worth looking into. But I just grabbed his current top 20, and by his I mean the ensemble that he's built of these various metrics. And he has a helpful column in this thing, which lists the teams are ranked by consensus, metric consensus, the power rankings. And then he's got a column that says, what about the average poll? And so you can kind of instantly see some teams that stand out. And this is catching my eye because Alabama, by the consensus of power rankings, according to Percival, Alabama is number 3 in the country. But remember, they lost that opening weekend game against Florida State, and people have been they've been a little bit off the radar. It matters because this week 5 of college football season, has some huge games, and one of them is Alabama at Georgia. And the Crimson Tide is a 3-point underdog. They go into Athens. It's on the road, but this consensus says that Alabama is actually a point and a half better on a neutral field than Georgia. And home field is probably worth maybe 2 these days. And so there's a little bit of an edge there if you want, but more than the, details of the edge is just that Alabama's looking pretty underrated by the lay people, by the polls in particular, coming in at 14, the average poll rating, when in fact they're way, way up there in the power rankings.
Well, I think you also point out, kids, good point. If I told you, forget about the columns that you post, this is a great thing that you posted. Suppose I told you the number 14 team by the polls was playing the number 4 team by the polls, which is what this metrics consensus says. And by the way, I'm also going to tell you it's the home field is the number 4 team. What most people historically, if that's the only information I gave you, I'm not going to tell you it's Alabama, I'm not going to tell you it's Georgia, I'm just going to tell you the ranked position, and I'm going to tell you whose stadium it's at. I think most people would say in most years, 4 would be favored at home over 14 by a lot more than 3 points.
Yeah, you might expect 7 or 10 or something like that.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah. And so this is, to me, this is a big discrepancy between the polls and their implied point differential and the power rankings and their implied differential. So that to me is fascinating.
Well, there's another good one this weekend as well. So there's 3 big games, 2 monster games. So the Alabama-Georgia, the other is Oregon going into Penn State, which is huge for the Big Ten. It's a whiteout game over in State College. And then the third big, this is probably the third biggest, is LSU and Ole Miss. And again, LSU is way up in the polls. Ole Miss is a bit of a sleeper, and the power rankings don't see it that way. The power rankings see Ole Miss stronger than LSU. And so both of those SEC games are kind of prove it games, because the team that has had a harder time so far this season or hasn't been quite as impressive are actually seen as stronger by the consensus power rankings.
So just to be clear, this site, Andrew Percival, he doesn't build his own models per se. He builds consensus, or he combines. He's doing a meta-analysis. He's combining other analyses.
In a lot of us ensemble, that's something that people should do. Ensembles are great. You don't know which one's best. You can track performance, but in general, just get a bunch of good ones. But he's going beyond that. Percival's doing like this public service by making all these data available. He's cutting it in all kinds of ways. You can link to it. It's a real service. But for us, it's just a useful way to look at consensus. All right, I think we have time to
I want to ask one question. Is Massey Peabody one of them?
It's not, because we don't update our rankings fast enough. So these things, one of the nice things about what Percival does, he's getting these updates out, by Monday. I think I grabbed these data yesterday, and you can run sims off them or whatever you want to do. Okay, why don't we do a quick kind of a lightning round? What caught your eye, give you guys another bite at the apple, Shane?
I guess I'll talk about how the Atlanta Falcons didn't cross the 30-yard line.
Oh no, was it that bad?
When they were playing Carolina? Yeah, they literally did not have a possession. That's got to be. And I'm not good enough.
You don't mean their own 30? You mean the other team's 30?
I think it might have been.
No, it can't be their own 30.
I have to know. But they basically no red zone possessions, no close to red zone positions, and that's got to be. I kind of feel like that's a stat. I mean, I just sort of saw that stat out there. I'd like to know the null distribution on that. I kind of wonder how often that happens, how rare that is. It's got to be pretty unique.
100%. And the props to the Carolina Panthers, props to Eric Eager, our friend who is in the front office there. That was a big win for the Panthers, first of the year, but just a smackdown. I think I saw it might have been the biggest margin of victory in Panthers football history. I mean,
that's amazing because they've actually. I mean, it's not like they've had some incredibly good teams over the years as well. But that's very, very impressive.
I hope I didn't get that wrong. I might have gotten that wrong. It might be the biggest in their rivalry, but it's maybe that's what it is. But anyway, it was a 30-0 win, big notable 30-0 win. Okay, Eric Bradlow, your second. What caught your eye?
Is Jalen Hurts an elite quarterback yet? Can we all agree to that? The guy has won 17 straight games. Remember, the last game he lost, he was injured in the first quarter, and then that he played a full game. He's won 17 straight games. And so all I know is the guy wins. Over that period of time, his completion percentage is 70.4%, and he only has 2 interceptions in this 17-game winning streak. So at some point, we have to give Jalen Hurts. That caught my eye. This guy just keeps winning and winning and winning and winning. And at some point, we have to say he's not a game manager. He's not, when they were down 26-7 and he lit up the Rams in the second half, all of a sudden he's not a game manager. Now, if you're telling me, is the system the Eagles built meant for him to pass for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns? No. But you know what? I'm just impressed. That's all. I
mean, I understand. I mean, I love the age-old debate: is are wins a QB stat? I mean, because that's the stat I saw was that Jalen Hurts is 10-0 against teams with other Tier 1 quarterbacks.
Correct.
Since like the start of the 2023 season, and it was quoted as Jalen Hurts is 10-0, not that the Eagles are 10-0. It's I just want to kind of point out it is in fact a team team sport, and I think the mark against Jalen, if you want to, because the word elite, I think implies even good when not necessarily like the good what Mahomes is doing now, where he's still actually performing fairly well.
I think we all agree to the following, Shane. I think we agree to the following. You could take Jalen Hurts and put him on another team, and under a different system, it's not obvious that he would add a lot to the expected number of wins of that team. And by your definition or mine, we might say that's not elite. Like put Tom Brady at his peak on any team, and that team's doing better than expectation. I'm not sure that would be true of Jalen Hurts. But I will say, he's won the Super Bowl, and he's on the streak of undefeated season right now.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's more, but kind of like for eliteness or I mean, I actually really like Jalen Hurts. I'm not actually really making the argument he's not elite, but I think for me, it's about the floor as opposed to ceiling. I think what speaks against him is when that team fell apart a couple years ago, and things really fell apart on everything. I mean, Jalen was kind of part of that story, but not all of that story. But I guess it's sort of like I still need to kind of see, I guess, him perform in kind of like with an off. It would be extra impressive to me if they get I'm not hoping for this, but if they were to get like a couple key injuries where he's having to do, kind of still continue to win games, keep his team in games, kind of like with what Mahomes is dealing with right now in Kansas City with his like receiver injuries and stuff like that, or something like that. And I wouldn't wish that on the Eagles or Hurts to have to go through that, but that would be more compelling to me.
Well, how about the following? We have to agree. We got to give a lot of credit to the Eagles front office and coaching staff for not only building complementary players around him, but for also building a system where he can be extraordinarily successful.
That's where I'm a little bit out on Shane's criteria, because I mean that they've built a robustness, I think, in that system and complementary, as Eric says. But moreover, I would add something. I'm curious now. Can we do something in modeling to get at high leverage situations in football. I mean, it seemed like
Yes.
the other day, I mean, they were down 26-7, I think, at one point, and
Yep, 26
this
to
was this
7.
amazing comeback. And when they were on the way back, I didn't watch at all, but every time I saw a high leverage play that Hurts was quarterbacking, they converted. It might have been 100%. And look, small sample, I get it, and it's hard to. I get it. But shouldn't we be able to say something about quarterbacks who show up in those situations? If it's true, it sure does look like it might be true.
No, I think I would love to see that kind of analysis. I think it would have to be complemented analysis by how I would also like to see for different quarterbacks how often they get themselves into high leverage situations. I mean, Jalen Hurts was having to
Okay.
complete a 26-7 or 20-7 comeback.
Good. That's very fair.
It's
very fair. Right. So
it's kind of like the quarterbacks with like these big streaks of like comeback victories or something like that. It's like, well, I guess that means you were playing good at the end of the game.
It flips the thing that they were saying about Harbaugh last week about he's lost more double-digit leads than anybody, but Andy Reid is like. But you look at the guys on that list, and it's a bunch of guys who have had their teams up by double digits. That's the flip of that. Okay, so we're going to run out of time, guys. My last caught your eye, of course, is the Ryder Cup. We only get this thing every other year. We only get it in the States every 4 years, and it's this weekend. It's only 3 days, guys. It's a quick thing that happens. It's been building up for literally 2 years. And the thing that I'm seeing in the markets fits with what I thought we were going to see, which is that the States, the U.S. is a pretty big favorite. People, when you just run down the names on the two teams, all U.S. fans have so much PTSD. They're like, oh, we're going to get killed. Oh, we're going to get killed. But that's just not the case. If you look at the data, the U.S. team looks stronger, and all the markets suggested the U.S. is a favorite in the betting markets. The U.S. is favored by the model at Data Golf. The U.S. is, for example, 58%, 59% on Poly Market to win, which matches the Data Golf model exactly. It's now look, anything can happen
compared to the last is that kind of lopsided compared to the last few times through? You don't need number. I just kind of generally that seems like a pretty big edge if it's like really at like the 58-60 range or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. That looks like a big edge. I don't have those numbers from previous matches, but it feels to me like the U.S. team is probably stronger. Look, let's look at Data Golf's numbers. So Data Golf runs, overall rank. They give a strokes versus average, and it's modeled to be predictive, and it seems a lot better than the world golf rankings. And so we can look at those and just run down the team. And what's true is that the Europeans have a top heavy team. So Scheffler is clearly the best of the 24 players on the two teams. The next 3 guys come from the top of the European team. So Jon Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Tommy Fleetwood, absolutely, they would be guys 2 through 4 on the U.S. team. But also the bottom 5 guys on the list come from the European team, and that's almost half the team. So we're going to see. I mean, it may be that the Friday, Saturday plays tight, but it should. The numbers say Sunday would favor. The Sunday is the 12 match plays. Sunday will favor the U.S. team. Okay. I think that's it. Anything else, fellas? All right.
Big weekend in sports.
Big weekend in sports is good across. Oh, we didn't even talk about baseball. Look, I looked at the baseball standings over breakfast this morning. You guys have this kind of impact on me. You should be proud of yourselves. And the AL playoff race is fascinating. I think you should be looking at baseball.
Yeah,
I think you should be looking at baseball scores all week long to see guys. Divisions are still in play. Certainly all the wild cards.
The Mets are doing quite possibly a historic collapse here. So,
so
that's
Mets
kind of
might
fun
drop all the way out after
well.
having like a 14-game lead, something that's maybe never. It hasn't happened in the division era.
I don't think it's happened in certainly the current sort of.
Look,
era.
I think almost everything is still in play. Meaning, who are the top seeds in each division? Who are the wild card teams
on the AL?
Who are going to win
on the AL?
On the AL.
On the NL
no,
side,
on the NL side, no. I mean, it's the top seed's going to be either the Brewers or the Phillies. We don't know yet which one. The Phillies are only
the top 2 seed. I mean, but it's kind of like
who cares?
I mean, I guess maybe that little 1-2 ordering is minutely important.
Yeah, we don't know who the wild card teams are going to be in the NL or the AL.
Yeah, the NL, we still have the West race between the Dodgers and the Padres as well. But anyway, good fun. And I mean, this is close to peak sports. This is close to peak 7-10 day window of the year. And the Ryder Cup really kind of elevates it. Okay, guys, why don't we stop it there then? Full show. We'll wrap it then. Thank you guys for listening. On behalf of Shane Jensen and Eric Bradlow, who have been in here for the whole time, for Adi Wyner and Absentia, Deion Simpkins, who makes the whole thing go, Dee Patel, the boss lady, Marissa Reyna, our producer. Thank you guys for listening. Come back and join us next time. Between now and then, enjoy your sports.